This is the Fleet Europe podcast, hosted by Steven Schoofs. Today's topic, multi-lifecycle mobility, the future of leasing. Introducing today's guests, Berno Kleinherenbrink, the Group Deputy Chief Executive Officer at Ayvens, Sam Heymans, the CEO and co-founder of Lizy, and Marc Wittenberg, the Global Category Manager Automotive Mobility at E&Y. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Fleet Europe podcast. In our podcast series, we discuss the most relevant trends in fleet and mobility management. My name is Steven Schoofs. I'm working at Fleet Europe, but today I have three interesting guests that we will see how they think about multi-lifecycle mobility. Is keeping the car in a leasing or fleet environment longer, is that really relevant? And could gain also popularity? Could it make sense, especially for electric vehicles? Because we are seeing now that we have more and more electric vehicles on the road, and perhaps we need to keep them a little bit longer or not. And in that case, can multi-lifecycle mobility be an interesting option? Our guests today are Marc Wittenberg, the Global Category Manager Automotive Mobility at Ernst & Young. Marc, welcome.
Thank you.
Berno Kleinherenbrink, the Group Deputy Chief Executive Officer at Ayvens. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we also have Sam Heymans, the CEO and co-founder of Lizy. Sam.
Great to be here. Interesting topic.
Yes, thank you very much. Sam, recently you received a new investment of 75 million euros. What are you going to do with it?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question, Steven. So with Lizy, we started 7 years ago, a used car leasing company, because we really believe that it can make a difference. And today it's indeed something that is quite fashionable to talk about multi-cycle mobility. And so I think this is really, we have proven that it works, the multi-cycle mobility. And now we want to expand it and become a European leader by really focusing on used cars and by focusing on bringing a fully digital service to our customers.
Okay. And what are the countries where you are going to expand?
So today we are actually active in Belgium, France and Netherlands. We are actually the number one used car leasing company in Belgium. We are very proud to do that. It shows that we can become a leader in the market. And then we expanded to France, where we are currently growing much faster than we've ever grown in Belgium. We have tripled our revenue this year compared to last year. And now we are just started in the Netherlands this year, and we are also growing there faster than in the beginning in France. So it seems that this multi-lifecycle mobility thing, it works in multiple countries.
Perfect. Berno, you are heading, let's say, as Group Deputy CEO at Ayvens, the biggest leasing company, multi-brand leasing company in Europe. What is your role exactly within such a big leasing company?
My role as Deputy CEO is the commercial part of the business, marketing, communication, and half of the countries that we manage.
And that's how many countries, roughly?
That's 20 countries.
20 countries. That's more than enough. So we are really happy that you can free up time to be with us today. So thank you very much. What do you think is the role of leasing companies like yourself in reaching the sustainability goals of fleet customers?
Well, we have to facilitate as much as possible the ambition that our customers have. To make sure that they can do that in a way that's affordable, that the drivers, their employees, are happy, and that they can focus themselves on their core business. And of course, we try to help them as much as possible with accomplishing the ambition that they have in terms of their sustainability, in terms of the reporting that they need to do. That is the task that we see for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. I think that Ayvens has a portfolio of more than 3 million vehicles on the road. How many of them are used cars?
Well, we are close to 10% with the new production that we do. That is multi-cycle lease, and we believe that number can increase substantially. As you pointed out, the demand and the acceptance of driving a car that has been driven before and is refurbished, software is updated, etc., is much higher than it was before. It's also the right thing to do from a sustainability perspective, but it also is quite interesting for people who have a relatively shorter period that they want to lease a car. Or, for instance, if you're looking for a value for money option, this provides also a lot of value for money. And in addition to that, what is also quite helpful is that you can almost drive immediately in that car because we have them available on the lot.
Exactly. Marc, you're working at EY, Ernst & Young.
Yeah.
Do you already have used cars in your vehicle fleet?
This is how you define used cars. So when I look at some, so contracts are going to end, and then probably you are purchasing these cars and then you put them on the road again with a new contract. What we do, so we get cars back very early as well, right? So people leave the organization, so we have cars that come back early, and we try to put them on the road again with our own employees first. Yeah. Okay. So in that sense, we use cars sometimes multiple times, yes.
Okay, perfect. And how big is your fleet? Because you are responsible for the global fleet, global mobility program at EY. Well, how big is your fleet?
We have nearly 12,000 vehicles. Yeah.
Perfect. Let's have a discussion. We are going to the first topic. And before we go to the news, gentlemen, we want to start with a statement that we would love to put forward. I'm starting with you, Berno. The statement is as follows. International multinational leasing companies are too big to offer leasing to consumers, to private customers directly.
I think that the size is actually quite helpful. Because it helps you in terms of your purchase power to make a good arrangement in the vehicles that you buy. The fleet that we have, and in particular, let's say the end of contract vehicles that we can make available for multi-cycle lease, we have a lot to offer. And the fact that we operate international also means that there are cars that are available from various countries that we can also offer across border for our multinational clients. Also for their staff in terms of private lease. I think it's much more beneficial to be big than the other way around. And of course, in particular on digitization, if you want to invest in making it possible, let's say making it easier for your customers, in particular for your private customers to do that, it's quite helpful that you have a big company and you can invest and you can make that available in multi countries. Okay. And I think the other thing also is that as a large organization, you can also guarantee that you will be there in future because the contract typically takes a couple of years. And as a private individual, you want to make sure that there's always somebody that will be there in future in case that there's something with your contract.
Mm-hmm. Sam, I see you nodding yes. Do you agree that scale is very important in being, let's say, loyal, but also that you can offer the quality that is needed to your customers?
Yeah, I think it's definitely helpful to have scale. I think for me, it's really true that with this multi-lifecycle mobility, digital is going to play a massive role in the leasing sector because you will really have to reach and serve customers that are not the traditional large enterprises. So you'll have to reach the SME segment, the freelancer segment, and even the B2C segment. And so to reach and serve them, you have to go full digital. If you think about the best consumer companies, they're all very digital. And one company I particularly like is Revolut. It's a digital bank. Mm-hmm. They reach and serve their customers completely digital. And of course, you have to have scale if you want to build the best digital product. But you also have to maybe not have legacy. And I think that is something that really helped, for example, Revolut to build the best digital bank in the world. Today, they have last year posted 1 billion net profit, 30% net profit margin, which is crazy. It's a bank, it's like revenue. It's like a net profit of Google or Apple at 30%, but it's a bank. So I think that really shows that even a new entrant can actually really make a difference in a massive market in which there's already a lot of big players. But definitely also for us, we need to strive for skill. We need to strive for leadership because we need to make a lot of investments in bringing the best digital experience to our customers.
Okay. Then I'm come to the statement for you. Second-hand leasing will only be relevant for private customers and juniors in companies, since most companies will always focus on new vehicles for their employees and to retain talent.
I don't think it's necessarily true. I think we see empirically from the data that we lease cars to everybody from entry-level employees to CEOs. I think that especially the high-end electric vehicles, they have a much accelerated depreciation curve in the first part of the first life cycle. So you sometimes see very expensive electric vehicles that have depreciated maybe 50% over a few months or maybe maximum 1 year. And so I think that unit economics actually work well also for high-end vehicles. And I think that being said, I think also indeed there's other elements like the sustainability angle, the cost curve, which is just better even for large enterprise in the long term. If you really want to move towards battery electric vehicles.
Okay. Marc, do you agree that you in the future will probably see also the uptake of more, let's say, used car leasing within your fleet portfolio, even for the higher functions in your organization?
I do think that there is an opportunity, especially when you talk about mobility budgets. Right, so and then you have the possibility to either choose a car or define your mobility a different way, but it all comes down to costs, right? So if you have a car and as you said, the depreciation is already gone after 1 year, then and you have a very interesting lease tariff right in front of you, so why not do it? I mean, these cars are getting constantly updated over the air, so they are basically new. And efficiency is getting better all the time. Yeah, okay. Less maintenance. Why not?
So the statement, a second-hand lease car doesn't fit with the multinational's mobility policy is not the right statement.
No, and you can look at it from different angles. So if you look at it from a sustainability perspective, of course, the longer you can use a car, the better. If you look at it from an employee perspective, then probably they will say after 3 or 4 years, give me a new car. But on the other hand, as I said, it all comes down to costs. There are a lot of people who say, I don't want to pay too much for my car. So if there is a second-hand vehicle available within a nice range, and especially the cars for 4 or 5 years ago, they were high-end. When they are on the road for a new, better pricing, why not?
Let's now see what's the most important news on the fleet and mobility this week that you have read. I would love to start with Berno. Is there something that you saw in the news that you say, well, this was something interesting?
Yes. Well, I was here a bit early and I read in the newspaper that there's a new pay package agreed by the shareholders of Tesla with Elon Musk, and that he can now earn over a 10-year period $1 trillion US dollars. I thought 1 trillion. That's 1,000 billion. Now there's a
How
long
many
list.
Zeros are that?
There's a lot of zeros. There's a lot of things that he needs to deliver. So he has to sell an additional 12 million vehicles. There have to be 10 million autonomous subscriptions on the road and 1 million robotaxis. So that's quite something. But when he agreed his package in 2018 of 56 billion, everybody also thought it's insane in terms of targets, but he did it and he delivered. And then I thought, how much is 1 trillion? That's, that's such and I looked it up. It's almost the same as what the entire population of France, of what they earn in salaries in a single year. So that means that if he gets his package, then... So I thought that was quite interesting news.
Okay.
Whether he's going to make it, we will see. But a fascinating number.
It's indeed. It's. I didn't read it, so it's for me. It's a surprise. But it's. Do you think it's exaggerated?
Well, I mean, he won't be able to spend it by the time he will get it. He's 64. So if you want to spend 1 trillion. I don't know how many years he has to go from then, but yeah, I think it's insane in terms of a number. But if he can accomplish this in terms of targets, then it's really a monumental change in terms of mobility.
Indeed. Sam, What did you
My
read?
pay package is not 1 trillion,
No?
Steven, no. I'm working on it. I will have a discussion with my board of directors tonight. What I read, I actually read an article that was quite relevant for today's discussion. It was about the European Commission wanting to put a mandate to move even faster towards battery electric vehicles for B2B fleets.
Mhm.
So they are talking now about moving to B2B fleets, 100% to battery electric vehicles as of 2030, which would of course be a massive acceleration. And I think that would have a very big impact on our industry, and it would definitely have a very big impact also on multi-cycle, because we see indeed for electric vehicles today that there is a very sharp drop of the value in the first year. And so then the solution is to lease a car longer. And that I think would really be very big, I think good for us in terms of, the adoption of battery electric vehicles, which is where we as a leasing company are really striving for and really pushing the boundaries on. But I think also not that easy for the sector to digest. I do see quite a few issues with that.
Explain.
No, I just think that today, for a leasing company, battery electric vehicles are very interesting because you have less maintenance, less repairs, there's longer durability, but much less interesting because there's a stronger depreciation in the beginning. And so the residual values is an issue for many leasing companies because they are actually selling the car after the first cycle instead of releasing it multiple times. And so I think that if we move to 100% battery electric vehicles, in some markets in Europe, you're maybe at 5, 10, 20%. Some of them, of course, we are already at 60, 70%, like in Belgium or in Norway. That would really be a very big shift. And that would really, create a lot of, changes, I think, for many companies, and will definitely lead to interesting times. So we'll see how it goes. We never know with politics, of course. But we'll know sooner than the pay package of Elon Musk. We should have news by end of year.
Okay. Are you getting nervous by this announcement?
We do not believe that a mandate at this point in time by 2030 would be good for the industry, and not necessarily only for the industry, but also it will be quite disruptive for, let's say, the pricing of electric vehicles. It will create an unhealthy push. It's too fast.
Mm-hmm.
And indeed, what we see is that the volatility of the pricing in electric vehicles, especially the second-hand pricing, will cause, let's say, leasing companies, providers, to be more cautious. And as a result, the cost will go up. And that will have a detrimental effect. So therefore, we believe it might be better to be a bit more cautious. Of course, we're all in favor of, let's say, the electrifying the fleet as much as possible. But you want to do that in a way that's manageable.
Mm-hmm. How do you look at that, Marc, as a global mobility lead? For example, if there is a mandate that all your business cars will need to be battery electric by 2030, do you then get worried that you can or can't achieve it?
The worry is more in how are we going to support electric driving in specific countries and specific regions. Right, we all know that we can drive full electric, so the distances nowadays, range anxiety does not exist anymore. But I can imagine if you live in an area where there is no charging infrastructure available, where you have not have the possibility for home charging, and there is no office charging, then it will be a difficult proposition for you. So I guess the limitation will be in the areas, not so much for us as a company.
Okay. Your news of the week, what did you read in the news?
I read an article about digital innovation and AI. So how is that going to impact our fleet size, for example? So we all use Teams, we all use Zoom, but what happens if we're going to start using virtual meetings with VR glasses, whatever? Or when you are, like in California, have the possibility to just call an autonomous taxi. Is it going to replace our entire fleet of 2,000 vehicles in the Netherlands, and then we only do 1,000 autonomous taxis and say, hey, based on your calendar, they will pick you up and deliver you somewhere? You don't need a car anymore.
Asking the question is answering it. So what do you think? You need that. It will have a huge effect on, for example, the size of your fleet and also the funding and the management of your fleet.
I guess it will have an impact. On the other hand, providing a company car in our organization is also a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So people like to drive a very nice car. And that will always be there. But the main question is then, do we still need 2 company cars or 2 cars in front of the house? Or can we also handle with just 1 car? So it will have an impact. Yeah.
Okay, let's come to the topic of today. So multi-cycle mobility. First up, Sam, how do you define multi-lifecycle mobility?
Yeah, it's a fancy word, multi-lifecycle mobility. I think it's about leasing vehicles multiple times. So I'm not that much into those consulting buzzwords. But I do think that the shift is really relevant, is really permanent. And if we go to those battery electric vehicles, which we are really going towards, whether we have this EU mandate or not, we will really see just different assets that require a different type of leasing. So we have to adapt ourselves as leasing companies. And I think that is an existential risk if you are a leasing company in 5 to 10 years time and you don't offer multi-cycle leasing. I don't see how you will compete with another leasing company who actually does it, because you will just get a lot less value throughout the multiple life cycles, throughout the full vehicle lifetime, and you will just not be competitive. So I think this is actually really something that will fundamentally change the leasing business model and will fundamentally change the way we think about mobility in Europe.
Berno, what do you think of the concept? Because also in the past, let's say that all leasing companies, big leasing companies, you have launched several initiatives in new mobility, and there were things with subscription, already used car leasing. It exists for a couple of years. There is car sharing, etc. We can't say that all of it is a big success. So how do you see the concept of multi-lifecycle mobility?
Yeah, so the way we see it, if you look at cars today, the quality is so good that it's easy to have them in say, safe, proper, cost-wise also good condition for 8 to 10 years. Which means that we will keep the asset, the car, longer in our books. And during that lifetime, there will be several people who will be driving that car. It can be a single individual, so that means that somebody takes the car on for a longer lifetime, or it can be multiple. So multi-cycle lease is simply making sure that you have a match between the expectation of the person driving it and the customer who facilitates that for that person, the time period, and whether it's a new or second-hand car, that doesn't matter that much. It means that we will facilitate the refurbishment. And that's, of course, now that in particular electric cars are more becoming like a driving computer. In particular, software is that you take the car once the driver is returning it, you refurbish it, you make it as good as new, you update the software, and in a relatively short period of time, you make sure that somebody else is a happy new driver in that vehicle, and it almost feels like to them as a new vehicle that they're driving. That's the way that we see that. And if you think about it, why should that not be possible for your entire fleet? And like I said, the quality of the cars is so good that maybe it doesn't match fully for all the assets that we have, but we definitely believe that there's a lot possible.
Of course, I can imagine that it's also somehow a solution for you as an owner of the vehicles to spread the risk that in reselling the vehicle, etc., on another market. So am I correct that eventually also the customer, Marc, that he will benefit financially from the fact that we will see more and more multi-life cycle mobility patterns?
That's of course what we're trying to do, is to create a win-win situation where indeed the risk is spread over a longer period of time. That means that you depreciate to a lower number, and then the volatility is less hurtful. If you depreciate to 20%, that's different than you do to 50% if there's a volatility in the market. And indeed, at the same time, you can make sure that there are more people happily driving that car at a really decent price, and then you create a win-win situation.
How fast do you see the growth of multi-life cycle lease?
It's faster than we had expected. There are several markets where there's a lot of opportunity. It depends a bit on the taxation, how well it will be accepted. Also, let's say in the B2B segment for consumers, of course, it's different. They don't have benefit in kind tax. But for instance, we were just discussing before the podcast that in the Netherlands, the benefit in kind tax is based on the original price of the car, which means that the older it gets, it feels a bit like you're paying relatively high price for an older car.
And if
but in
catalog
France-
prices drop like they did in the last years, it's really crazy.
Yeah, then
So the Tesla now,
yeah.
you have a lot of less benefit in kind for the new model than
Yep.
the model of 2 years ago. But next year it's going to change because then the battery will increase. So it's a big mess.
That's it. That makes it very difficult. And I think that indeed, if the taxation is also helping a bit, for instance, in France, you pay a benefit in kind tax based on the lease installment that you pay. So that helps. Yeah. If that becomes lower, then also the payment is lower for benefit in kind.
Okay. Marc, what are for you the conditions to make multi-lifecycle mobility or used car leasing interesting for your company next to the financial element?
It's all about the offering. So it's an add-on on the current offering that we do to keep the possibility open and the flexibility in. For me, another question arises, especially when you talk about 6, maybe even 7 years, and I look at the gentleman to the side of me. So how and what are the possibilities going to be if we would like to use our fleet as a grid stabilization, or just use the batteries and have some agreements with the energy companies for grid stabilization, right? So there could be a new revenue model that we can benefit from,
Yes.
but it is your car, right? So if the battery is drained and then recharged and drained and recharged again, because these cars are standing still all the time, either at the office or at home, we can make a revenue model out of it, but it's your car. So how do you want to, or how do you see this in the future?
That might indeed be an option, and you want to charge at the moment that indeed the electricity is abundant and relatively cheap, and the other way around. That could definitely be an option. We don't currently have a full strategy yet, because it's also dependent a bit on let's say the possibility to use the car to charge the grid. Of course, the willingness also for the grid operators to do that. Definitely, you can imagine that with our size of fleet, if you have 3 million, or let's say by that time 4 or 5 million electric vehicles, that's of course a massive resource that you can use in case that there's something not working on the grid.
So then it could be a very interesting proposition for you to offer that after 4 or 5 years, you say, hey, you can extend the contract. And then you are also allowed to use your car and your battery as a storage facility, but also then reduce pricing because
absolutely
there are new revenue models.
Already negotiating here.
But that will not help your business.
No,
right?
but I think it definitely does. So I think especially on the multi-cycle. So if you think about the residual value, the terminal residual value of an internal combustion engine vehicle is very low. It's a bit of metal, you know. It has maybe like a 500, 1,000 euro. But if you think about it on an electric vehicle, it's very high because if you have a battery, you know, if you buy a home battery today, I looked it up for my own house. It's maybe like 10 kilowatt hour. You pay like 7,000 euro. You know, in our cars, it's like a 70, 80, 90 kilowatt hour. Those are huge batteries. And so the terminal value of electric vehicles in the long run is much higher than an internal combustion engine because you have that utility indeed. It can actually become a sort of like grid stabilizer, you know, like creating sort of arbitrage on electricity prices. So I do think it's actually very relevant for us. On our end, you know, we lease 70% of the cars out of the first cycle, we lease for another cycle. And so basically in those 2 cycles, often the cumulative margin of the 2 cycles is already bigger than the outstanding residual value. Imagine we lease it once again, and then at the end you are going to actually keep it in your fleet, but maybe you're going to lease it not to a customer, but maybe to a plant. Maybe you're going to lease it to the government, maybe to, you know, the electric grid operator. So I think it adds utility, which is definitely good. So there's value being created, and then how we define it between different stakeholders, that is for another time, I think.
What are the operational challenges of multi-lifecycle mobility? You are a specialist, or do you say there are no challenges?
There are many challenges, definitely. I have a few gray hairs already from the last 7 years of building a multi-lifecycle mobility company. I think, to be more serious, I think one of the biggest challenges is really the digital part. So really, you know, when you think about it, you have to operate the car for 8 to 10 years. So the cost of operations of every year is extremely important because you're going to multiply it by 8 to 10. And so in the long run, who is going to win the market is the one who can best serve their customers at the lowest cost. And again, how can you do that? It's through digital. Again, the example of Revolut, it's a digital bank, better experience, lower cost, higher profit. So I think this is really the challenge, is how can you really build a digital infrastructure? And I think that, again, it's an existential risk. If you are a leasing company, in 5 to 10 years, you don't leverage AI and digital to manage that complexity, whether it's on new or used cars, I think you might be irrelevant. So I think this is really difficult because we are not known as an industry to be the most digital. I've never heard a leasing company say, look, we have the best digital tech stack in the world. This is a challenge for our industry. And this is really something that I think brings a lot of complexity, especially to this used car challenge, because all the leasing companies, they have always operated on new cars. So all the systems are made for new cars. And now we have to change that, do open heart surgery while running a marathon, which is not very easy.
Digitally wise, are you ready for the next chapter?
There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And of course, the world is moving very fast, which means that especially if you're a large organization, and yes, we're young, but we're also, using systems that have been a long time already there. That means that we do invest. And currently we're still busy with integrating 2 companies and preparing ourselves for the future, which means that we need to do more in terms of digitizing our organization and making sure that we're attuned with what's happening in the world. And of course, if you're a small startup, then you start with a clean sheet. That makes it easier. In our case, it depends a bit also on the market. There's some markets that are more ready for digitization. In a few markets, we are close to 100% that you can do completely digital with us. In some other markets, it's less, and it's also less required by the market in itself. But that's definitely something where we will be continuing to invest in the future.
Marc, how do you see digitalization in fleet and mobility management, or what do you expect in terms of digital capabilities to make your life easier?
We expect a lot because the more you automate, the easier it gets. And the less failure is going to be there. So in the invoicing, as you already mentioned, so from that perspective, the more automation, the better, I would say. Yeah. On the other hand, if you look at us as customers, we also would like to talk to someone if there is something going on. So there should also and always be a moment to have a real person to talk to. Your account manager, for example, whatever. So you cannot automate everything.
Okay. Of course, a question that we need to ask, we already touched upon it, residual values, used car value. A couple of people think that with multi-lifecycle mobility, it will have a positive impact on the value. Others think it could also be a negative one. What's your opinion?
It's definitely positive. I think there's no doubt. If you think about residual value, you think about supply and demand. So today there's too much supply of battery electric vehicles in the used car pool and not enough demand. And so if you create more demand because you use those vehicles in another leasing contract, then of course, the price will go up because you will actually reduce the amount of supply in the market. So I think fundamentally, there is nothing wrong with the residual values of electric vehicles. The purchase power of people who go to market for an electric vehicle is the same purchase purchase power as the people who go to market for an internal combustion engine vehicle. The problem is that the electric vehicles on the catalog value are more expensive. And so you see actually today we have a price parity in the used car market between BEVs and internal combustion engine vehicles, which is something we've been talking about like for 10 years, that there's going to be a price parity on electric and internal combustion engine vehicles. It is there today on the used car market. And you just see that because, again, it's not that the people who bought a 15,000 euro car are now all of a sudden going to spend 20,000 because it's electric, but they're actually willing to spend 15,000 on an electric vehicle. So I don't think that fundamentally there's anything wrong. I just think of course, if you put in cars into the market that are 30% more expensive and you expect them to be worth 30% more in 4 years, I think that is a logical error because it's a purchase power driven market. It's not a market that is fully driven just by technological evolution at the front end or by increased prices on the front end.
Berno?
Well, today we're still selling cars that have a technology that is relatively old. So if you look at the first Audi e-trons, they're being sold at the moment. Jaguar I-Pace, those were innovative and really new cars at the moment that they came into the market. But if you sell them now, the range is relatively limited. The original investment was relatively high. So those cars are loss-making in terms of the residual value that we currently see relative to the expectation we had at the moment that the car was put on the road. We now know more. We're more experienced with those cars. We have more cars. Prices have also changed a bit. Technology has advanced, which means that over time, I think that the risk will reduce. And at the same time, the fact that you have multi-cycle lease opportunities gives you a much better proposition in terms of the residual value risk that you take. Because if you, like I said, if you depreciate to 50% and you're 5% off, then it has an impact. If you depreciate to 20% and you're 5% off, then of course the impact is a lot less. So that I think will be quite helpful.
Okay.
And you can make a comparison with the consumer world. So they are also facing residual value risks. So what if I now purchase a 5-year-old car? What's going to happen? How old is that car? So we all know that the technology is advancing so quickly that people would like to drive full electric, but don't want to take the risk. So then an added or an extended period in leasing, where you can say, okay, leasing company, you take the risk, that is beneficial for everyone.
And maybe if I may, so one thing that everybody was worried about is that those batteries, will they stay in good condition and can I still trust it, etc. Well, if you look at some of the taxis at the airport, the Teslas, that they've driven 600, 700,000 kilometers, battery is still in really good condition. The battery has been recharged, fast charged, very, very often. So I think that the technology is much better than we had expected when those cars were put on the road. The pricing, of course, is also a lot dependent on what, let's say, the manufacturers do with their new car prices. And there you see that some of them are a bit opportunistic in the way that they price it. We know all who they are. And that, of course, has an impact that is difficult for us as leasing companies to price in. So that's why we're cautious when we see a bit too, haphazard pricing by the OEMs in the way that they sometimes do that.
And I think it's a very good point, actually, Marc, because there's this sort of like information asymmetry. So of course, Berno and I, we read those studies and we say, those batteries are really good, and we are really informing ourselves a lot because it's our job. But the average consumer, they read in the news, the electric car is up in flames and the residual value is so bad. And so they're afraid of it. So you can see that the leasing penetration in every market is higher for battery electric vehicles than for internal combustion engine vehicles. And so again, it's an opportunity for us as leasing companies because people, they will want to lease an electric car. And so actually for us, it's an opportunity, especially on these more affordable multi-lifecycle vehicles. We will actually create a market that is not served today by leasing companies. So I think it's actually an opportunity by us to take that risk, to step in, which is also part of our role. This is part of why we are paid as a leasing company, because we actually take residual value risk, and to serve those customers well. This is, I think, a massive opportunity, is a massive growth pool for leasing companies such as Ayvens or Lizy.
I would love to know what's next on your agenda. What is, if you look at the upcoming weeks, a thing where you say, well, this will keep me busy? Berno.
Well, one thing for us is the discussion on the mandates. So that is imminent at the moment. There will be a decision or a proposal coming up. So that's something that we're definitely involved in.
And the outcome, what do you want? That they are going to turn back their intentions?
Well, we're not in favor of the mandates as they're currently being prepared. By 2030, everybody full electric, all the company cars. We do believe that that's too aggressive.
Okay.
So, and we want to explain why.
Perfect. Sam, what's on your agenda?
Fleet Europe in a few weeks already, I would expect. I think otherwise, look, we just announced this fundraising. So I think it's really up to us now to deploy the money wisely and to invest it in the right areas, digitization operations, to create a great customer service. to really keep growing as fast as we do in those 3 markets. So that's really just on our mind. It's really making sure that we do even better on a daily basis. And of course, keep following the market trends. We'll have less of an impact, I think, than some of the bigger leasing companies. But, we'll follow with interest and we'll try to adapt our strategy as good as possible and try to navigate our small speedboats in between the bigger oil tankers and cruise ships.
Okay, nicely said. Mark?
We are going to focus on charging costs and charge card fraud.
Okay, that's an important issue.
Well, we all have seen the QR codes, right? Especially when you go abroad, you can pay with your own card. You can also use company cards or whatever. But if there's a QR code and you use your mobile phone, it could be a problem. So how are we going to handle that one? On the other hand, charging costs is also something that we have to look at, because there are so many different pricing models in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Public charging, fast charging at the office. So how can we get grip on the charging costs?
There are penalties for overstaying.
Penalties, yeah.
You had it?
No.
You seem very enthusiastic, Steve.
Very quickly calculated. If you, for example, have a subscription on fast charging, then you are most of the time cheaper than when you publicly charge your car on the street.
Mm-hmm. So that will be quite an exercise in the upcoming weeks and months.
Yeah, because it's different per country as well.
Yeah.
And even per city.
Indeed.
Per charging pole even. It's really wild. I don't envy your job on that one. It's tough not to crack.
Okay. Well, it can be one of the topics that we can handle at the Fleet Europe Days. That will be on my agenda in the upcoming weeks. So on the 22nd and 23rd of October in Luxembourg, we have the Fleet Europe Days 2025. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining and see you next time.